Welcome back to the Sunroom and another episode of Outside the Box with CB. In this segment, I'm going to begin a series of critiques on the logic, reasoning, and wisdom of Dr. Jordan Peterson. I hope you'll join me, and I hope he will too.
Why? Well, let's have Dr. Peterson explain why.
Do you have something to say that you're not saying? If you do, then it's your fault. This is your fault. It's your problem. And you might say, well, I'm too afraid to talk. It's like, fair enough. How afraid are you not to talk? You know, people say to me frequently, they compliment me on my bravery. And I think, you don't understand. I'm not brave. I don't like conflict. I'm way more afraid of losing control of my tongue than I am of the consequences of saying what I have to say. Because I know what happens when we allow other people to control our tongues. It's not good.
Because I have something to say and feel obligated to defend the truth of St. Peter, Boy Jews, the Julio-Claudian dynasty of Gallicanism, and the divinity of truth in God. And there are billions of lives crying on my conscience to defend the truth of Greco-Roman Christianity in the name of humanity. For that reason, I'm actually afraid not to speak out.
He's undeniably one of the greatest intellectual phenomenons of our generation. Dr. Jordan Peterson's work as a clinical psychology professor at the University of Toronto has catapulted him to international fame with arguments that are challenging and changing the way we all think. He has captured the attention of millions, especially of young men, but some young women as well. And many of you, however, have never heard of him, but you'll get to know him for the first time through this interview. Today he is here, breaking down his provocative rules for life and the prescription for success that will surprise many of you. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for the invitation. So, do you fear that you have become a Jordan Peterson impersonator? Do you fear of, in some part, becoming the famous, the suit-wearing, brilliant Jordan Peterson? The certainty in the pursuit of truth. Always right. I think I worry about it more than anything else. I hope I do. Do you? Like, as the prototypical 27-year-old directionless guy that stumbled onto your work, something in you spoke to something in me. You taught me the value of telling the truth and of being responsible and of doing what is right, not what is easy. It was like a pebble at the top of an intellectual awakening avalanche. It was like a gateway drug to integrity. And it's not just me that's got better. The world is undeniably a better place because of the sort of person that I've become. I'm a better friend, I'm a better son, I'm a better boss, I'm a better partner. I've had the fortune of reaching tens of millions of people on this podcast, and I've given TEDx talks, and I've improved the texture of my own daily existence because of the process that your work triggered.
Why Dr. Peterson? Well, to challenge the best. Mass media everywhere is selling and promoting Dr. Peterson as the great intellectual phenomenon. His wisdom, knowledge, challenging the way we all think, an intellectual pebble of integrity and leadership for young men.
The purpose of your life is not going to be happiness. Sometimes it is. Sometimes that will come. But there will be difficult periods in your life, and happiness won't suffice then. But what you can have in your life is an adventure. You can have an adventure. And the truth is the best adventure. There's no doubt about that.
He teaches truth is the best adventure, and if you have an adversary who voluntarily accepts, then you have yourself an adventure. I like adventures, and I like adventures in truth.
We're built for romance and adventure, not for comfort. And so you're going to find the meaning of your life in adventure. And if you have an adversary voluntarily accepted, you've got yourself an adventure.
Said I had something to say and was afraid not to say it. I've agreed with Dr. Peterson. Truth is the best adventure. But here I'm going to register my first disagreement with Dr. Peterson with his choice of adversary. I'd argue that a main objective and benefit of finding the truth is establishing points of agreement and harmony. In mind confrontation, you seek an adversary, you will surely find one. The ego it takes to change one's own opinions in the face of evidence and in opposition to accepted beliefs is not generally found in the adversary, but in the seekers of truth. If you seek a seeker of truth and friendship, the more you can find and trust, the richer and more rewarding your life will be. As Socrates says, there is no possession more valuable than a good and faithful friend. The true seeker knows he knows nothing, and nothing he knows can he know with certainty.
The adversary, well then maybe you'll blow the hell off and suffer while you fight it.
Dr. Peterson, tell me what happens when your adversary is a global criminal enterprise, owned and operated by the wealthiest men in the world, and they're leveraging that wealth and power targeting you with their criminal abuses of legislative, political, judicial, and media powers for your personal ruin and financial destruction. Targeting you because you dare to live in their neighborhood or work in their world without supporting their corruption, just as the World Economic Forum has done Julian Assange. And is today's Dutch farmers. Is this when you need an adversary, a friend, or a patriot? You know, Dr. Peterson, if I was Julian Assange and you told me I needed to get tougher, I think I'd gladly tell you where to go.
Imagine that you don't have anything better to do than what's right, and you know that.
I certainly think Julian Assange has better things to do than sit in the Belmarsh prison.
Defender of truth, however, I believe society and young men are being misled by Dr. Peterson. So I'm volunteering to be his adversary in the adventure of seeking the truth. I've personally been on this adventure path longer than he has. We have a bit of a different commitment to the truth than Dr. Peterson, which I will explain later.
Understand is that the adventure of your life is embedded in speech.
I agree with Dr. Peterson on the importance and significance of the truth, and I could not agree more with his assertion the adventure of your life is embedded in truthful speech.
You should always look for information that contradicts your current viewpoint.
Dr. Peterson asserts you should always look for information that contradicts your current viewpoint. So I want to give him a little contradiction. But let me tell you why I agree. Because the one thing you should know is your certainty is absurd. So in the virtuous pursuit of true knowledge, you should always be willing to evaluate challenges to the truths you believe in. To keep learning, growing, expanding your true knowledge and wisdom. Dr. Peterson says it's important to engage in dialogue with people that do not agree with you. So let's give another disability.
And that's another reason why it's really necessary to engage in dialogue with people that you do not agree with, because they're the ones who will tell you things that you don't know.
I agree with Dr. Peterson and we need to engage. And personally, I've adopted Socrates' philosophy to question oneself and others as the highest form of human essence. So Dr. Peterson and I agree on the need to question ourselves when we're an adversary. Although we reiterate the adversary is best found among friends and partners, not only egotistical adversaries in your contest, conflict, or dispute. The search for truth is a discussion or debate between two like-minded individuals seeking to arrive at the truth together.
Alright, now that's painful, right? Because who wants their axioms contradicted? It can take you apart, but it's the only way that you can ensure that you're learning at the same time that you're maintaining your stability.
Would you rather engage in dialogue with friends or a partner you don't agree with, or an adversary? Which would you be more willing to accept things you don't know for? Would you be more or less open to information that contradicts your axioms from a friend or adversary? Would you rather be taken apart by a friend or an adversary?
It's of crucial importance in the maintenance of your own stability. One of the worst things that can happen is that you find yourself in a situation where no one is offering you corrective feedback anymore. Because you rely on the corrective feedback provided by other people to keep yourself sane, to keep moving in the ever-changing environment. And if you cut yourself off from that feedback, then you end up static and shrinking. It's really not good.
Is it better to get a corrective feedback from a friend or partner than from an adversary wanting to deceive you or put words in your mouth?
Oh, what happens when we allow other people to control our thoughts? It's not good.
Dr. Peterson states it's of crucial importance in the maintenance of your own stability because we rely on the corrective feedback. Let's give him a little corrective feedback. I agree with Dr. Peterson. It is of crucial importance, not just in maintenance, but in the development of comprehension and expansion of one's knowledge, perceptions, and identity. Comprehension because you are called with logic, reason, analysis, and objective facts to support and defend your conclusions or assumptions. Knowledge because you will learn your opposition and strengthen your own position, or align with an outcome closer to the truth you are both seeking. Perceptions because we are all one-of-a-kind witnesses. You can often find someone with a perspective that enhances your own significance, a point of view you had never considered. Identity because challenging your knowledge, perceptions, and comprehension with an adversary will provide corrective feedback to your personal pursuit of truth and knowledge, all of which will strengthen your character and your self-confidence. I'm currently fond because I think it's timely of just how profound the discovery of Lucilius' Epicurean perspectives on the nature of things had in the Renaissance and Enlightenment periods of modern thought. I also agree with Dr. Peterson. It can be painful to confront the truth. In the New Testament in Romans 10:1-4, it's stated, Jews have a zeal of God, but not according to knowledge. They're ignorant of God's righteousness and going about lying to establish their own righteousness, and have not submitted themselves unto the righteousness of God. Give you a little word substitution there. They are ignorant of God's truth and going about lying to establish their own truth, and have not submitted themselves unto the truth of God. For Christ is the end of the law of righteousness. Jesus said he was the truth. Is the truth the end of the law for righteousness? Do we find justice only in the truth? Are the Jews ignorant of the truth, of the righteousness of the truth? Is the objective truth the righteousness of God? Is the truth the divinity of God? Do the Jews reject the divinity of the objective truth? If so, are they rejecting God's laws of the objective truth? Do they then reject the laws of humanity? When no Jew ever has to beg, all men see that our people lack aid from us, Jews. As Jews neither a pagan nor an apostate, but in fact Jewish. Were pagan and apostate changes made after World War II in the spirit of the master manipulators? In the spirit of a rational, logical debate, an objective inquiry of observable facts, are the Jews then biased in the search for the truth?
Is the cross a metaphor for the truth?
And outside the box, I've always liked and referred to the cohesive and patriotic perspectives on the search for truth. I think you'll find these consistent and encompassing the beauty of Dr. Peterson's teachings on the truth at least on speaking. In fact, we heard that when we had 5 young men with
intellectual integrity.
Once the Dr. Peterson nails tears, sorrow, and desperate revolt, having the axioms contradicted, can take them apart. Antonio and Believer, however, exalt the idea that truth must be defended and established together, and to arrive together at the truth is a revolutionary act. I truly believe there's a path of truth. Humanity can walk together and arrive at peace and harmony if they can adhere to truth, logic, reason, knowledge, and acceptance of it. All it takes is a little human self-discipline, as Socrates taught humanity. The really important thing is to live according to your principles. A little human self-discipline is Montesquieu's written letters, founded on the true principles of the troglodytes, the axioms of virtue, and the equity laws of humanity. Note I said true principles, the stepping stone on the path of accepting the truth according to logic, reason, and knowledge. Given the principles, axioms, and self-discipline discussed in the pursuit of truth, I believe you'll find the relevance in these quotes from Socrates, Montesquieu, and Leviticus. To quote Socrates, the perfection of a man is a state of mind. It's the greatest good to discuss virtue every day. The soul, like the body, accepts by practice whatever habit one wishes it to. Do not do to others what angers you if done to you by others. Do unto others as you'd have others do unto you. Eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, bound by the laws of equity, when you have no humanity. To quote Leviticus, if a man cause a blemish in his neighbor, as he hath done, so shall it be done to him. Breach for breach, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, as he hath caused a blemish in a man, so shall it be done to him again. And he that killeth a beast shall restore it, and he that killeth a man shall be put to death. Ye shall have one matter of law as well for the stranger as for one of your own country. For I am the Lord your God. The God's honest truth of rational logic and knowledge. If you disavow the laws of equity, you're apes, and there is no humanity. Where law ends, tyranny begins. Law alone can give one freedom. To quote Montesquieu, no nation is as powerful as one that obeys its laws, not from principles of fear or reason, but from a passion, which I take to mean a virtuous passion for the truth. The truth, humanity is worthy of its gifts of logic, reason, and accumulation of knowledge would be obtained by the perfection of the application of those gifts. And one more from Socrates: we cannot live better than seeking to become better. Humanity should stop waging war on itself and wage war for the evolution of life with humanity. On numerous occasions during the last 5 years, I've sought a willing participant to walk the razor's edge that have yet to find anyone walking the path, anyone else understanding there is a path, and willing to debate the truth on that path. I believe our forefathers knew this path, and society has been intentionally, as Orwell warned, that further society drifts from the truth, and it does as propaganda separates us from it, the more society will hate those who speak the truth. However, to arrive together at the truth is a communist and revolutionary act that can redirect society back to truth, harmony, and justice. I I think there's a very good argument to be made that that's what occurred with the philosophers of the Enlightenment period. John Locke, and the treaties of government, Montesquieu's spirit and laws and separation of powers, and Persian letters, Voltaire, Rousseau, Thomas Paine, common sense, and others. I think it's worth a few minutes of your time to consider these objectives, procedures, and in turn, the search for the truth, with those of the scientific method they birthed. For Greco-Roman philosophical Christianity in the ancient world, the concept of monotheism as we understand it today did not exist. All ancient people were polytheists. Greco-Roman Christianity recognized just one God. The divinity of God is the perfection of all objective truth. Consider these quotes of Julian the Apostate, who was attempting to restore the Roman Republic and its Christian roots and virtue. To selectively quote Julian, Sodom's son proceeded from the one God, one out of the one intelligible will. The one, in as much as unity appears to be the most ancient of all things. This then is the single principle of all things which serves the universe as a model of indescribable beauty, perfection, unity, power. Just a quick question. Do you think objective truth is something that unifies us all? Monotheism refers to the belief and worship of only one deity, or divine power. Many world religions follow this belief system, but the three most widely practiced are Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. Although Christians and Jews call their deity God, Muslims and Islams worship Allah. The monotheism that emerged from the historical experience of the Hebrew people became common to the worldview of Western civilization. In the Roman Empire, Jude refers to the philosophical debate as a contest and asserts, according to the laws and decrees, the victor debate is allowed to exalt, but the loser must not complain. For it is disgraceful that no Jew ever has to beg, and the Galileans support our poor, so all men see that our people lack aid from us Jews. I've laid out my statement of intent, objectives. The goal is the pursuit of truth, and acknowledged our intent at acceptance of consensus on the truth. I'd like to bring your attention to Julian's final statements. Depart then, and in the future live every one of you under the guidance of the gods. Let every man choose his own guardian and guide. Could you take that to mean live every one of you under the virtue of God's objective truth? Under the divinity of God's honest truth? Let every man choose his own God, his own conscience, whether that's God, Allah, Gaia, Mother, Father, Zeus, or whatever you consider or call the one creator of one intelligible world. Prior to Greco-Roman philosophy, every feudal kingdom overlord dictated his religion be observed in his kingdom. There have been thousands of gods and ritual observance demanded of them all. Louis XIV of France was a Bourbon absolutist king, demanding Christian conversion to Catholicism under imminent threat of death. And this ignited the glorious revolution, the American Revolution and the French Revolution. And this was the lie Socrates was not willing to tell, and for which the oligarchs condemned him to death. He was not willing to confirm the existence of gods for which he had no proof. He famously said he was smarter than these men, for he knew he could not know. Well, these men believed they knew what they could not. I believe the difference between an intellectual and a pseudo-intellectual is founded on a belief. Socrates is attributing the saying, "Let us follow the truth wheresoever it leads." I swear if he leads by the dog, I swear, for I must tell the truth. What do you think he meant by the dog? Perhaps with the loyalty of a dog he speaks the truth. He drank hemlock and died with it and tell a lie. Have you ever correlated the teachings of Socrates with those of Jesus Christ, when Jesus saith unto him, I am the way, the truth, and the life? No man cometh unto the Father but by me. Both Socrates and Jesus were on the same path. I have written about and learned about the truth for many years. Some time back, a fellow tweeter sent me this clip of Dr. Peterson on Fox News, and it's an excellent diatribe of logic and reason for speaking the truth. So I'm happy to share it with you. Take a listen.
You know, you make your decisions in life, and I decided when I was very young, I'm in my mid-20s, that I was going to say what I believed and see what happened. I talked to you earlier in the talk about adventure, you know, about the adventure of truth, and I don't think I'm happy about what has happened, and I certainly have dragged my family through their fair share of, well, both hell and also incomprehensible opportunity. It's expanded our lives in both directions to a tremendous degree, but it's certainly been an adventure. It's not been dull, and I don't believe that it was a mistake. Whatever happens as a consequence of telling the truth is the best thing that can happen. It doesn't really matter how it looks to you at the moment, or maybe even across the years, because you have to. It's an article of faith in some sense. Do you believe that reality is better constituted as a consequence of truth or falsity? If you believe that reality is best constituted as a consequence of truth, then you have a responsibility to speak the truth, and you can't assess the consequences and say, well, that was a mistake, because part of the decision that reality is best constituted as a consequence of the truth is the decision that no matter what happens is the best if it's a consequence of telling the truth. And so that's what I conclude. It's like, this is what happened because I said what I had to say as clearly as I could say it. And that's as good as it could be. Now, whether or not that's good, well, it's good compared to all possible alternatives, all possible realistic alternatives. That's an article of faith as far as I'm concerned. You know, our culture is predicated on the idea that truth in speech is of divine significance. It's the fundamental presupposition of our culture. Well, if you believe that, then you act it out. And you take the consequences.
The diatribe, I called it. A desperate revolt against a society of washing lies and deceit, deception, propaganda, fraud, and immorality. It's a plain coincidence dictionary uses a diatribe with the Roman Catholic Church as an example. It was an anonym. Once again, I agree entirely with Dr. Peterson. It's forceful, profoundly logical, rational, knowledgeable, and compelling principles on the truth. As points of debate, we're in complete agreement with this set of true principles on the truth. Listen again as Dr. Peterson explains the commitment he made in his early 20s. This statement could well have been made by me. In my early 20s, I made a similar commitment to myself to tell the truth and not to deal in lies, by committing to truth and honesty.
In life, and I decided when I was very young, I'm in my mid-20s, that I was going to say what I believed and see what happened.
The distinction I want you to hear is Dr. Peterson said he made a commitment to say what he believed. And that means regardless of whether it's the truth or not. Now listen to Dr. Peterson on the realities of lying.
Applying your speech and your actions in the service of short-term expedience, you are working to bring about hell on earth. And that's true. It's true literally, and then it's true. I suspect it's also true metaphorically. And that's a real truth, man. When you get the literal and the metaphorical working at the same time, it's like, that's real. So it isn't just that you have to fix up yourself so that, you can have a better life. It's like, who cares about you for a moment? It's you have to fix up your life, because if you don't, every time you make a mistake that you know to be a mistake, you're leading the world toward hell. And I believe that. I think it's true.
Quoting Dr. Peterson, When you're falsifying your speech and your actions in the service of short-term expedience, I call that lying and committing fraud in the service of your ego. Quoting Dr. Peterson, you're working to bring about hell on earth. Agreed, true. Lying brings about hell on earth. Quoting Dr. Peterson, literally true, and I suspect metaphorically true. Agreed, literally true, and later I'll argue metaphorically true as well. Agreed, it's a very serious fact. Quoting Dr. Peterson, you have to fix up your life. Because if you don't, every time you make a mistake that you know to be a mistake, you're leading the world toward hell. I'm going to rephrase that in my terms. You need to fix up your lives, because if you don't, every time you lie, knowingly lie, you're leading the world toward hell, including yourselves. You're manifesting hell on earth. And under those terms, we agree. But what's the one common interest?
To adopt responsibility for their life, to tell the truth, and to understand that their failure to participate fully in being leaves a hole that's precisely the size of their soul in the cultural landscape. It's no joke. We need all the light we can possibly bring to bear on the situation.
Agree with Dr. Peterson. It's a very serious fact that lying literally and metaphorically brings about hell on earth. Agreed, you should adopt responsibility for your own life. Agreed, you should tell the truth. Agreed, your failure to participate fully leaves a hole in the cultural landscape. However, I'd argue it's exponential multiples of your soul as lies permeate, mutate, and spread across the collective consciousness of humanity. Agreed, Dr. Peterson. It is no joke. And we need to bring all the light we can to bear on the situation. So I'm phrasing our agreement on the truth like this. If you lie and commit fraud in the service of your ego, you're literally and metaphorically leading the world towards hell. And consequently, you need to fix up your lives and quit leading the world and your own lives into an eternal hell. Be cognizant. Previously, I agreed I have something to say, and I'm not afraid to say it. Agreed, it's not good to allow other people to control our thoughts and tongues. Our minds, bodies, or souls. Agreed, truth is the best adventure. Disagreed on the choice of an adversary versus friend or partner. Agreed, the adventure of your life is embedded in truthful speech. Agreed, always look for information that contradicts your viewpoint. Always, I said, because certainty is absurd. Always remain skeptical and curious. Agreed on the search for truth takes a minimum, too. Agreed to have your axioms challenged can take you apart. Cognitive dissonance is real. Agreed on the corrective feedback is important to the maintenance and development of personal knowledge. Agreed, reality is best constituted in the truth, and that is an article of divine faith in humanity's gifts of logic, reason, and accumulated knowledge in knowing it is the truth, in knowing it is that one thing binding, the one of the one intelligible world for all of humanity. A big time to remind humanity is the only species violating the truth in order to serve the monarchies of human self-interest. The time to remind humanity the truth is God's law, and to lie the original sin of humanity. And as Dr. Peterson states, manifest itself as hell on earth. Agree. The consequence of telling the truth is the best thing that can happen.
Why do you do what you do?
No, I believe that truth will save the world. I believe that. So you speak truthfully, and you watch what happens, and you take your consequences. And maybe you hope and have some faith that in the final analysis, things will work out in your favor. But perhaps they will and perhaps they won't. But that's faith, eh? That's faith. Faith isn't believing in things you regard as ridiculous, sacrificing your intellect. It's a decision. No. Will truth, beauty, and love save the world? Well, you can find out. I believe that truth will save the world.
I agree with Dr. Peterson. The truth could save the world, and that would be a thing of love and beauty.
You're going to take the consequences one way or another, So, you want the truth on your side? Or do you want to hide behind falsehoods?
Personally, I believe Dr. Peterson would prefer to hide behind falsehoods, forever relying on Satan to forgive his sins rather than exposing the truth to light. To quote, Dr. Peterson said that Catholic doctrine, where in this case, it's indoctrination to acceptance of a lie. Dr. Peterson will subliminally suggest to you with his commitment to the truth of the doctrine, you should accept this lie as the truth. It is true you can be saved and redeemed no matter how great your sins. Sounds kind of convenient. Destroy all life on earth and God will still forgive you for believing in Satan's lies. This is not a logical, rational, knowledgeable, fact-based truth. It's an indoctrinated belief. How do we know it's a belief and not the truth? Just as there's no certainty of God, there can be no certainty that God will forgive you of a single solitary sin, regardless of what you want to believe. To quote Caesar, men in general are quick to believe that which they wish to be true. Don't you wish you could get away with every sin you ever wanted to commit? It would follow Dr. Peterson's beliefs would include this resolve by confession to the magician, the Godfather, the Pope, the devil himself, Satan. This is based on the Catholic doctrine, Merit of the Saints, to which Martin Luther responded with the 95 Theses. Martin Luther began by criticizing the sale of indulgences, insisting the Pope had no authority over purgatory, and that the Catholic doctrine of the Merit of the Saints had no foundation in the Bible. I would add it has no foundation in logic, reason, truth, for justification except by the devil who believes there is no God. Thousands of years of human intellectual philosophic thought and hundreds of years of scientific research later, the human intellectual consensus has always been that certainty is absurd. Yet the atheists of our culture reject the factual knowledge and human credence of repetitive observation and do not accept this as the truth. They're either the most ignorant of humans or the most egotistical. And the evidence suggests both. The truth cannot be defeated and should be respected by contradictory evidence. To war against truth is a losing battle against oneself and the harmony found in its acceptance. A logical, rational, knowledgeable, intellectually ignorant empowerment of the human ego to believe it knows what it cannot by rejecting the truth, binding us all in this one out of the one intelligible world. He who is at war with truth is at war with himself, and the truth is an enemy that cannot be defeated.
And that you can be saved and redeemed no matter what your sin. It's like, that's true, but
The Protestant Reformation would come to incorporate changes such as a complete reliance on Scripture, as the only source of proper belief. And faith in Jesus and not good works are the only way to obtain God's pardon for sin. Faith in truth. Faith in truth and not good works is the only way to obtain truth's pardon for sins. Said another way, you can only make your truth whole by exposing your sins to the light of truth. The foundation behind these changes was largely theological, because Jesus represented truth, and God as the divinity and the perfection of all truth. If Dr. Peterson believes reality is best constituted in the truth, why does Dr. Peterson support founding your beliefs on the truth of a lie? It's not faith in the divinity of truth.
Yeah, the truth in speech is of divine significance.
I don't believe Dr. Peterson is committed to the divinity of truth being significant in his speech.
But that doesn't mean you don't have to face the consequences of what you've done.
I believe Dr. Peterson has more faith in the Pope's dominion over purgatory and Satan's forgiveness for his sins, no matter how damaging and horrific his lies have been to the cultural landscape of society.
Their failure to participate fully in being leaves a hole that's precisely the size of their soul in the cultural landscape.
Faith. That's faith. It's faith isn't believing in things you regard as ridiculous. Sacrificing your intellect. That's Greek drama.
I call that a ridiculous drama in faith and an insult to human intelligence. I've laid out the truths we agree on and our differences, and while I seriously doubt Dr. Peterson believes in truth saving the world enough to respond to this episode, I'm going to leave him with these questions. Dr. Peterson, Google says, you specialize in Christian ethics, philosophy, theology, and the Catholic intellectual tradition. You published a book recently on Christianity and God, and I would like to know where you raised Catholic. Dr. Peterson is spreading beliefs founded on lies, not literally and metaphorically bringing about hell on earth.
And that's a real truth, man. When you get the literal and the metaphorical working at the same time, it's like, that's real.
Dr. Peterson, have you provided clinical trauma services to the Catholic Church's considerably large and voluminous sexual abuse victims? Dr. Peterson, I heard you mention in one clip you've done some work with the UN, and with your background and specializations, you'd appear to perfect operative for the CIA's human trafficking operations with the Vatican. Have you ever worked for the CIA? Dr. Peterson, I was made aware of your work. Do you know of me? Did you have a psychological profile, an IQ profile, clinical intelligence, projective or emotional intelligence assessments on me? You were an atheist, and yet you feel qualified to teach Christian ethics and Catholic intellectual tradition while not believing in God? That's all for now. Thanks for listening to this episode of Outside the Box with CB. I hope you found it interesting and interesting enough to return.